Well, if you've ever experienced your favorite sports team, your favorite sports franchise struggling, well, the show Ted Lasso has something that you can probably relate to. And in it, Ted Lasso is a coach for American football who gets called on to coach a British team. So to coach international football or soccer. And he does so for a team that's part of the Premier League in Britain. However, this team, this fictional team, Richmond, struggling. And Ted is trying to do everything he can to keep this team up, to keep this team from being relegated, to keep them to stay in the Premier League as one of these excellent teams. Now, at the end of the first season of both his time as a coach and the show, everyone Ted talks to seems to be pretty down about their chances to stay in the Premier League. They don't have a lot of hope. And that leads Ted to give his final pep talk to the Richmond team at the end of the season. Because there he says this. So I've been hearing this phrase y'all got over here that I ain't too crazy about. It's the hope that kills you. Y'all know that? I disagree. No, I think it's the lack of hope that comes and gets you. See, I believe in hope. Believe in belief. And where I come from, we've got a saying too. Yeah? It's a question, actually. Do you believe in miracles? Now, I don't need y'all to answer that question for me, but I do want you to answer the question for yourselves right now. Do you believe in miracles? If you do, I want y'all to circle up with me right now. Now, spoiler alert, as close as they get, Richmond doesn't succeed in staying in the Premier League for that first season. Yet they do come back. And another spoiler alert, in the second season, they are able to re-enter the Premier League. Now, there's a lot of ways to go for the Richmond team. They're heading there on the right path. It may be hard for us to see hope in the world. And that's whether it's because of our favorite sports teams or just all the other things that we see in the news. Things at times can seem for us to be pretty bleak. And it's easy for us to be like the Richmond fans, for us not to want to have hope, because we don't want to deal with any disappointment that may come from having that hope. Yet hope is what we're called to. When we see that in the words Paul has for the Romans today, the very beginning of our reading, we hear this. Whatever was written in former days was written for our instruction, so that by steadfastness and by the encouragement of the scriptures, we might have hope. The point of everything we hear in our readings today is to give us hope. Hope is what is beyond us in this day, in this world even. Hope is what God has made possible for us to even have. Hope is our hope that things can be made better. And that's the very hope that Isaiah illustrates for us this morning. We hear that the wolf shall lie down with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the kid. The calf and the lion and the fatling together. This is important because these are not animals that get along. These are animals that eat one another. Throughout all creation, all this time, that's what we've seen. But now we're getting a new hope in a little child that will lead them. That child is the new Adam, who will not only reign over creation as God intended, but make things better. Make it so that these animals who traditionally have not gotten along well, have even eaten each other, will now be able to sit together in peace. This child, this second Adam, is Jesus Christ, the one we are looking for, the one who will give us hope, not just to restore things to the state that God intended them to be in, but to make them even better than they were before, better than even the time of creation itself. The hope our song gives us is this same hope that we hear in Isaiah, the hope that we've been getting from many of our other prophets throughout our previous season, the season after Pentecost. In those prophets, we heard the words that were trying to bring us back, even the words that we heard last week in Isaiah, to bring us back to God, to help us to realize that God is where our hope is founded. Even when everything else seems to be crumbling around us, even when it seems that our lives are bleak, that God is there to guide us through those dark times. That even when things look bad, God is there to help bring us to the other side. Romans gives us the hope that this hope we hear of is not limited, but given to all. This is the reason for Paul's focus on the Gentiles, the other nations, those outside God's chosen people, the kingdom of Israel. God's promise is being extended. And that's what we heard of last week even. That God's promise is going beyond just the walls of Jerusalem and extending out into the heavenly Jerusalem. Christ's salvation is proceeding forth from God's chosen people to encompass not only God's chosen people, but to encompass all of us. As Paul says, Jesus' work of salvation has been done so that he might confirm the promises given to the patriarchs, and in order that the Gentiles might glorify God for his mercy. That includes us. We get to receive God's mercy. We get to receive God's hope too. And even the words of wrath that we hear from John the Baptist carry hope with them as well. While John the Baptist chastises the Pharisees and Sadducees, those around him, he also reminds all listening that God is able from these stones to raise up children to Abraham. And this mirrors the hope that Paul gives us, that God reaches out to all people, both to conform to the promises of old and to give mercy to all others. It is also a reminder that no matter what happens to our own individual parishes, God will always provide a way to raise up those who will do God's will in the world. It can be easy to let go of hope. It's understandable to not want to seek out disappointment. Yet God's word is there to give us hope, as Paul reminds us. Even in our darkest moments, God's servants throughout all time are there to remind us of this hope. Even the lion and the fatling can sit together if only we will let Jesus be our guide. And if only we will take the time to open up our hearts, to let God in, to not only restore us, but to make us better, to make us the ones that God intends us to be.